Sunday Talks with the Marshmallow Man.
Hey, I'm Ossie from Three Monkeys Solderless, home of the world's best cables for your pedal board, both for audio and for DC. All kinds of cool colors, best cable out there. You got to check us out at Three Monkeys Solderless. ThreeMonkeysSolderless.com. There's the link down below, I think, if I can do that sort of thing. All right, so I think I got some of my wish from last week where I wanted to hear some more Fair Warning outtakes. And I guess they were out, but I didn't have everything I thought was out there. So I wanted to thank two people for getting this to me. First would be Greg Platzer, right? The luthier extraordinaire from the great state of Pennsylvania. BCR Music. If you ever bust the head off your guitar like your Les Paul, the only person you want doing that, trust me on this, is Greg Platzer. 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 Greg Platzer. He'll actually make it sound, it'll sound better, he says. It's funny, but he was like, would you please break one of your guitars and send it to me so I could prove to you that these Gibsons sound better after I do the repair on them and spline them? So check out Greg. So Greg Platzer sent it to Greg, my partner at Three Monkeys, Howard. And then Greg sent them to me. And now I got them. And on there was hear about it later. So I was like, let me listen to it. And it just brought up a whole nother tangential thing to the recording process and to the sound and to Don Landy's ingenuity and to studio techniques. So I thought for today that we'd look at this a little bit and understand the process maybe, or begin to understand the process, theorize about what was going on in that room, in those rooms, and maybe learn something about how Don and Ted thought and how they recorded things, which is probably applicable to all of their recording techniques, right? So without any further ado, let's just cue this stuff up and let's listen to it and see what it sounds like. So here it is. Let's listen to it. Woo! Never thought it was done this way.
Everybody ready here? All right. Take off your clothes now.
Hate to pause it as always, but so we can hear that this is the track that they used. If you have a good memory and you're an Ed head and a complete nut job, like probably most of the people that are watching these series of videos are, you know exactly how the flanger sounded on particular notes. And to duplicate that would be impossible over and over again, right? Because you have a random kind of a sweep where you start, where you finish, and you can tell the inflections and the pick and this is the track that they use, the guitar track. Now, what surprised me in one way did not surprise me in another way. What surprised me is that they were recording the dirty guitar at the same time. So what I think is going on, what I'm listening to here, you hear it start in the beginning, right? Where Eddie is playing and Dave is kind of doing whatever he's doing there, right? We're going to turn it back up again. And hear that?
Woo!
So that is the track, but it's through the Marshall and it's distorted. And that is not the sound that's on the album, right? That comes in and is blended with the guitar, with the distorted guitar, and then switched over. So what, here, we'll listen to it again. I'm sure you all know where I'm going with this. Now it comes in.
Everybody ready here? All right.
Okay, so what we have is Eddie's guitar was split after the guitar. It went in two directions. It went to the Marshall and it went into the console. That's my feeling. I don't think there were two amps involved in here. I could be wrong, but I think that this lays credence to the mixing of that dry guitar signal, which can be used. You know, I think someone else I think it was maybe Plexidust, had commented about something like this, that if you're, an engineer and you're working on an album and things are, you want to make sure to cover your rear, right? You always got to cover your rear. You don't want to be like, oh my God, we're missing a track, or this didn't come out right, or I wish we could do this over, but they're gone. You want to record as many possible sources for the original as you can, just in case you got to do something like reamping, right? Where you kind of take the dry guitar signal and re-put it, just the recorded signal that you've recorded already from the performance, and throw it through an amplifier and re-record it to get a different sound that may fit in better, or to change the sound, or for EQing, to combine signals, one like at different points. You may take it right off the guitar, you may take it out of the back of the amp, and then you'll take it from the speaker. So you might have 3 tracks that are being combined to create the final product. And what's interesting about that is that each one of these things has a quality of its own, which is not present in the other ones, so to speak. So for instance, if you were to combine a distorted guitar signal that's recorded at the microphone with the output from the guitar itself, you're going to have a percussive sound that has a lot of scoop mids, a lot of highs, a lot of information, very clean, dynamic, short, plus this kind of mid-rangey, boxy kind of sound as well. If it's combined in the right way, you might not notice it, but it fills out the sound. Same thing with taking a direct signal from the back of the amplifier, where now you're getting the distorted version of the guitar sort of like by itself, right? You have more bandwidth because you're not using the mics and the speakers. You're going to get more top end. You're going to get a different mid-range. You're going to get all the frequencies, and you can sculpt it together, right? So we see in this, he goes from listening, there's a distorted guitar you can hear, and I'm not sure if that's bleed from how they recorded with maybe Dave doing the vocals afterwards, and this is in the room or in his headphones, or whether it's at the same time. That seems less likely. I would think that they would probably bring Dave in later after they get the take with the band and have him sing over it, because you're going to want more probably attempts there than you would with the band, because the band was pretty tight. They could probably do 1 or 2 takes and you got what you need. I think Dave was always working on the lyrics, on the melody, inflection, and perfecting all that. So you would want him to be able to, they're going to record the band and then Dave's probably going to sing over it. So my guess is that this was done on the band's take, right? It's not bleed through. It's not coming out of Dave's headphones when he's listening to the playback to sing over or sing to. So you have the distorted guitar, you have the clean guitar combined together, all right? I think that's what's going on. Now we can listen to a little more of it. Let me get this up.
Take off your clothes now.
Now both are here, distorted and clean. And now it just goes to the clean, direct signal. And then a third track comes in. That one right there, when Eddie comes in, is probably an overdub later. But this is, you can tell that they're the same track because the flanging is the same, right? If you were to record a distorted track with the flanger on and then go over it again, now playing clean with the flanger on, you would get chaos, right? Because the flanger would never sync up like it did. So it's the same take. There's no question about it. they had two signals out of there. So what are we listening to, right? This is another puzzling fact, is like, what is the pickup? What is the guitar? Obviously, the distorted sound, it sounds like, something like a Frankenstrat or a humbucker. It sounds more humbuckery to me, right? That the very beginning, this part here, right? 1 second. Let's bring it up. This.
Woo! Yeah.
That sounds more like a humbucker to me, right? But as we go on, it's starting to sound. This part, it sounds like a Strat in the mid position, right? Between maybe 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. That. Now, is it possible that they used the humbucker? It has to be, right? So they made the humbucker sound like a Strat. So I kind of set up a very rudimentary thing just today, right? This is very rudimentary. It's not dialed in at all, but it kind of gives you an idea of the sound sculpture. So up here, let me turn this off. Up here here we have a channel strip of API, which is more than likely what was used to record. So we have the mic pre, we have the three band EQ, and then a line driver. All right, the output of which, right, that's the sequence. So preamp, EQ, line driver, into the flanger. Maybe the flanger was before it. We're going to try it both ways and see which it is. It could have been done. I think it was, so let's switch that out, but we'll try it this way first. And then a harmonizer set to the 910, because you can definitely hear, that there was either the 949 or the 910, which are pretty close. I got both of those real ones, and they're pretty close. The glitch is a little different. The clocks are a little different, but it's pretty damn close. So let's just listen to, we got the same old Stratocaster with the humbucker. This one's a PAF that I've got in there now. And let's see. Oh, wait. I got to get my guitar cord. Guitars don't work without these. It's called an air gap in the technical world. Okay. We're going to have to dial it back a little bit. A little too much. Okay, so that's pretty much what the guitar sounds like just by itself. So let's turn on the EQ. So I have it set, just kind of quickly fiddled some knobs. You could probably do a million times better if you spent more than 30 seconds on this. So let's listen to this. Right? Turn it up. Turn it up. A little bit more down. That's about right. So that's pretty good. Let's see if we can now add the flanger. I shouldn't have turned down the volume. I haven't practiced the stretch chord in a while. I was afraid I was going to miss it, so I bailed out. Pulled the ripcord. All right, so we got that. Now we'll put on the harmonizer. There we go. All right, so now we have a little bit of a pitch on one side down. All right, so I think we're about 4 cents down on one side and even on the other, which creates a cool sound. Right? Oops. The other possibility is that I've seen pictures. Now, this is where more investigation could be done, where there was a Telecaster pickup in the Frankenstrat for a while. And I'm not sure. I thought it was around the second album that was going on. So Fair Warning was still a little while away. So was that a Telecaster pickup in there? So let's get a Strat. And let's just see how that sounds in comparison to the humbucker. I mean, that doesn't really sound too much like a humbucker guitar anymore, but let's take the Stratocaster and see what it sounds like. Now, this has dust on it. Other than that, I think these are lace sensors. Vintage Hot, I think they are. The Fender Lace Sensor Vintage Hots. So they're, pretty standard. So let's go through bridge selection. I almost had it. I haven't played this song in so long. I should have practiced it. You'd think you'd practice this before you just try it. I'm surprised I even remember how to play it. Everybody's going to say, well, actually, you don't. Okay, I should have qualified. I'm surprised I remember how I thought you're supposed to play it. How you actually do. All right, qualify in there. All right, so that's that portion. You know what? Let's turn up some reverb. Let's get some plate on this bastage. All right, so we go into the GarageBand here, right? So I'm using GarageBand to record with, and I've got the TRS. I've got the whatchamacallit. Sunset Sound Reverb from IK Multimedia. So I'm going to go to a plate is what I'm going to do. So they got plates here. They got all the Sunset plates. We're going to go with the triple plate, see what this sounds like. Oh, now I've lost the guitar sound entirely. Let's see what we're doing here. Okay. You got to turn up the volume, apparently, on a guitar for it to work. All right, let's turn up the wet a bit. Okay, so that's the plate sound that they've got. It's going to be heavy on the reverb for a second until I figure out which one I want to use. Let's try the first plate. Did they use a spring? Because they had a spring there. Let's go with that. Just for fun, because we haven't used that before. So that's the spring reverb from there. And I'm going to set the level a little bit. That's probably good right there. All right, so let's change to the in-between positions, right, which are the fun Strat positions. I almost had it that time. Drat! I suck so bad. All right. So that's, I think, closer, right? Now the reverb's gone. What the hell did I do? Oh, I detected feedback. That's some bull. All right, now if it were the Telecaster middle pickup, it would just be a middle pickup perhaps, right? Or it could have been the bridge in the Tele. So let's go to middle and see. This is like totally picking butt here, isn't it? Ow. That might even sound bad if it was like distorted. That's got to be explored. The Telecaster in the middle, because it's going to be hotter than this thing is, must be explored. All right, so let's go to the this position, the 2 and 3 position. Maybe. I don't know. We're going to have to do some more exploring on that. So I thought we probably went on way too long with listening to me to play that awful guitar I play. But it's just, it blew my mind to hear actually that's what they did. It was like, it was there. You know, it's there. You know what was going on. But to hear it was like, holy shit. It's like getting let in on the secret or whatever. So that was really cool. All right. So we're going to continue with more of the, of all these tracks and what we're learning. We might, set up all kinds of interesting little things to get some ideas. And maybe it'll inspire somebody to put things together in a new way. Or maybe it'll be like, man, I've done this so many times. Would you just shut up? But anyway, let's go on to the, YouTubes, and let's answer some of these questions that we got from last week. So probably I should have been having this all keyed up, but here it is. So we're gonna start answering these real quick, and then we'll call it a night. And I'm gonna come up with some more stuff, and maybe we'll try to increase the frequency of these sessions. All right. So the first question is from Dr. Tim. Hey, Dr. Tim, how are you? Good to see you. Ossie, everything you touch sounds like it was handcrafted by Zeus. Assuming like Zeus built shit that sounds great. Well, that's way too flattering for me. I appreciate your comments. I do. It sounds even better when it's in the hands of somebody that can play. Trust me. I've seen it. It works. But thank you, Tim. Welcome as well. Next we have Hex Rockstar. Okay. This is a long one. All right, so I'm just going to read it out loud here and we'll go through it. The splat sound is present. So we were talking about the sound of the higher gain sounds on the first album on those raw takes where it sounds to me like Beyond Fuzz. It's where the preamp tubes are being hit harder than they conduct and are creating more of a sawtooth, square wavy kind of sound that has not so much sustain like you would in a cascaded amp, but rather overload. And let's say that was the splat sound. So it says splat sound is present in any super lead to various degrees. Okay. It's that dip in the mid frequencies of the tone stack being clipped by the phase inverter. Well, the clipping, is involved. It can happen in a lot of places, but it's more of a phenomenon that is related to physics than it is to any particular amplifier. But yeah, with a 50K mid pot, you get less of that. Okay, but if you turn the mids down to 5, it comes back. The harshness also depends on the treble pot value, which is always over spec in old Marshalls. Yeah, a 250K is where they're at. So I've seen them up in the 300s. A variac down the amp for volume, though I believe it was done to prevent mains transformer from melting down instead, reduces cathode emissions to an extent, yes, and you lose gain, so you need a boost. Yeah, I kind of agree with sort of where you're going with it, but I think I found a different rabbit hole to go down right now, which is related to the variac being used to keep the head from blowing up because of how it was loaded, right? So like, why would the tubes melt? I mean, plexis don't melt down on their own. Occasionally they do, but you know, when a super lead is just, you don't have to variac them to keep them from melting down. That's just not going to be the case. But if you load them in a bizarre way where they create a lot of power amp distortion, then you're starting to need that. So yes, I don't buy the theory that the MXRQ was only used for buffering cable length before the Univox Echo. Okay, yeah, I don't buy anything about anything, even my own stuff. I don't buy anything. I think that everything has to be considered until it's known. And there's so many ways of doing this. Like, I really want to get across that the purpose of this is not to pontificate about, I know this and I know that, and this is the way it was done. And blah, 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 blah. No. The purpose of this, I was talking to someone on the phone for a while, and they know who they are. It's difficult to explain, but there's something like a yoga or a kung fu, right? And the way I see it is like, a yoga is not about stretching into funny poses to me. A yoga is a method of using something to gain knowledge and insight into metaphysical concepts or into the theories of workings of multiple things that are tangential or completely unrelated to the subject of study. So, for instance, studying, let's say, guitar sounds, it brings you into areas of physics. It brings you into areas of metaphysics, of spirituality. It brings you into areas of, you know, things that are the real mysteries of the universe that you can explore through something, a discipline, right? So in my case, my yoga is this stuff. And it gives me insights into how the universe works, which is really what I like to do. It's just something that fascinates me. And I don't think I'll ever understand any of it. But it's more like not to understand it, but to be amazed by it. That's really what it is. It's to be amazed by it. Because understanding it, I don't think is possible. It's to be amazed by it. You know? So I never want to see like that I'm telling you how something is. It's not. Because I don't know. And I will never know. It's more about, let's consider these things and let's play with them and let's see what pops out of this, you know, observation and sort of experimentation and how our attitudes and how our processes affect the outcomes. So, Hexa Rockstar, whatever I say, like debating back and forth is more Socratic than it is anything to do with disagreeing, because I believe that if I were to sit down with you and you were to show me your setup and how these theories work, I would know that I agree with you. So we're on the same path, I think. I do, which is really cool. All right, so let's keep going. I don't believe that the MXR EQ is booped down. I could agree with that, absolutely. It's needed for the kind of gain and also helps with the phase. Oh, wait, helps with the phase 90 loss of volume, sustained whammy bar licks on I'm the One. Also, you need something hissy in front of the phase 90s. You can hear it on the record. Well, one of the things that's interesting, too, about the MXR pedals, like the phase 90, the flanger, all those things, is that if you have something with a buffer or a bigger, if you need in the first position before those, if you have something with a lot of gain, right, signal gain, not distortion, we talked about before, but signal gain, these pedals become quieter, right? And, like, for instance, don't take my word for it because I read it as well. I was like, he knew. Tom Schultz. He used all these MXR pedals, which, you know, everybody says suck. But if you use them in the correct way, they're silent. They really are. They don't create a lot of noise. If you can put the flanger, if you could put a big signal like this line driver in front of the flanger, you're not going to get any weird noises and hum and hiss. You're going to get over the noise floor. And if you use the EQ pedal first, that works. And if you use the Boss EQ pedal, that works too. So yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. I've just completed the entire signal chain with the real deal gear. Very cool, except 20 watt Celestion, 70 ZP3, no compressor, script reissue phase 90. Average real 74 script services does sound as clear. My blue band, blah, blah, blah. There's also my pictures adds to the splattiness of the 800 and 1600 have spikes when pushed thus far. The trough between the spikes generates splattiness. Any signal that has a dip in the mid sounds like fuzz when distorted. Now, there's some agreement there, right? Because we talked about fingerprints, right? And what creates a sound, a particular tone, a signature sound. And it is the relationship between the various peaks in the waveform that create the sound. And you can use bass and treble all day long, right? Like a low cut, high cut, low pass, high pass. And the fundamental tone is going to stay the same. It's just going to get brighter or darker or sound like it's under a blanket, but the sound will stay the same. It still will sound like Van Halen 1, even if you turn the treble all the way down. That's because the fingerprint is still there, which cannot be manipulated that easily. So yes, the troughs and the peaks between these points on the frequency, if you were to like use a frequency analyzer, that's what creates the sound. And yes, different frequencies make your ear feel different things, right? A lot of people love to crank the treble on their amp to get more distortion because our brain perceives brighter sounds, rather distorted sounds as being brighter. When you distort something in the recording process, you can get brightness out of it, right? That's one of the tricks that you can use, that you can use compressors and limiters and just smash things and distort them because they create harmonics that are above what was present in the original source, right? If you listen to like a Bee Gees album or the Doobie Brothers album, or Mariah Carey albums, her voice has information in it which is way above, well, Mariah Carey, let's leave her out of it, but she could probably sing that high anyway. But like the Bee Gees, there's a signal present in the mastered recordings that's not there at the source, and that's due to distortion, right? It's a technique. All right, so let's go on. The reason you hear it in the chords on I'm the One is the chorus ascending chords is because Eddie is raking the strings, possibly using their fingers together with pick. When he hits the unwound strings, there's a splattiness. Steve Stevens' Atomic Playboys album has a splattiness all over, just more produced. Yeah, Steve has got a similar sound, and Steve actually was, I built some stuff for Steve, and I actually had the pleasure of having a few minutes, 40 minutes or something before a gig to chat with him when he was out with Billy Idol, and we talked about all that kind of stuff. And I remember he was the one who told me that the Van Halen 1 album, because he had heard all these tracks that we're hearing now long ago. He said it sounded like crap compared to the finished product. So I guess by crap, it meant like this really, splatty signal. So yeah, interesting. Let's see, where do we leave off? It was never reproduced with the amp alone. Cat meow sound. Also, another characteristic is the envelopey sound of the splat, which has a wow sound or the cat meow sound. Yes, we're talking about exactly the same thing. I have heard that sound. I've heard that described that way. with a transient effect that was never able to produce with the amp alone. It might be due how the strings are fretted or the attack dynamics of the pickup. It might sound like a phaser 90 swirling, but I don't think so. No, it's definitely not. That is a product of the stage, whatever it was, whether it be a integrated circuit, a transistor, or a vacuum tube, going beyond the limits, but without creating a ton of compression. Right? So it slams into the wall and it falls back down quick. You'll see it's a gated sound. You hear it described as gated a lot because it's the transitory nature of it. I don't think the Phase 90 has 2 dips in the frequency spectrum. Will sound splatty at the point of cycle and clipped by distortion. The phaser has 2 dips in the frequency distortion. I think it has a bunch that you can see riding in the waveform on a frequency analyzer. Yeah. Also, did you know the original flanger has an input impedance of 600K that brings down the pickup resonant peak? You read it here from... Okay, yeah, so thanks. Yeah, definitely, signal chain is important in how you put the things together and in the order. And you have to be able to match things together. And I do think that these producers and somebody was helping Eddie with getting this stuff right. I heard, I don't want to speak poorly about anybody because this is not poorly at all. But, you never know how things are interpreted. But I heard from another famous tech that I'm friends with about a particular gig about a guitar player who was, consistently in the top 5 guitar players of all time, consistently, who had a particular amp tech, who went out to look at their rig that on a gig where it said it didn't sound right. And he went out there and saw what was put together in terms of the pedal board and was like, oh my God, the order of this stuff is ridiculous. And I'm surprised that, that you guys put up with this for this long, considering that, the impedances of everything were so mismatched. The signal losses at different frequencies were so bad that the end product was just, awful. So he was able to go and rearrange everything and put it back together again in a way that made sense in terms of the relationships between each pedal's, input and outputs. And the rig came to life. And that's how it stayed from that point on. And this particular tech, not me, amp tech as well, was the reason why, right? So people sometimes will get help. And I think Eddie knew about this stuff, or somebody around him knew about this stuff to put it all together correctly, because he definitely had it together correctly. No question. All right. So that was a very cool post Hexa Rockstar. And I think we should actually put this one post on the side too, and have it, have a little bit more exploring on it as well, because I think there's some meat on those bones. I know there is. I shouldn't have said I think so. All right. So let's go on. Warrior of Genghis Khan. Cool. I like Genghis Khan. That's a cool name. Or Genghis Khan. Or Genghis Khan. It depends upon where in the world you're from. Genghis, if you're from that area, probably from northern India, or Genghis if you're around here, or Genghis if you're in school. All of those are cool to say. All right, the MXR 6-band EQ did not have an on-off switch, but since Eddie had that custom line switcher and a tone bender using housing, it's possible the MXR EQ were having the boosted level. Yeah, I mean, he could have been using that thing as a loop box. That's the first theory, is that thing is a loop box. It's awful big for a loop box, and it certainly is a waste of what would have been a fairly expensive pedal at the time that would have had a pretty good purpose. So I'm not saying that there ain't more shit still in there. Excuse my French. Like maybe it was a switcher, but also maybe there was something else in there. But if you open up, someone said it was the Vox tone bender. And that's what I was thinking, but I'm getting old and I confabulate things, and I called it a color sound. So that was my fault. But Vox tone bender. So there's a lot of room in those cases. So maybe you would just say, well, I always leave it on anyway, so I'll just leave that in there and I'll use the box for making, more switching systems inside of it, because it's like a huge box with like this tiny little matchbox size circuit card in it. It's like ridiculous. Anyway, yeah. All right, so cool. Warrior of Genghis Khan. Tone Master General. Maybe they just raised the voltage on the Variac to get some added gain for those spots. Very possible. Very possible. In fact, with the Marshmallow, I've actually got it downstairs because I'm building a clone of it for a guy in England right now. How you doing? It's sounding really good. And you'll probably see that amp soon. And setting the bias for the power tubes, the way I've set up the amplifier, is critical. And yes, you can actually mess with the Variac on it and raise it up slightly, and you'll hear more distortion. But at the cost of, you best be watching them tubes, because if they get too hot, you're going to blow the thing up. But for a couple of minutes, it might be okay. So yeah, we'll explore some of that too. When you get the amplifier set up with the incorrect load, where you got to drop it down so it doesn't blow up, when you got it on the edge and you start to turn it up, it can get pretty crazy. Cool. So thanks for that post. Next, we got Eddie Cruz. Hey, Eddie. Thanks for all the emails, too. Eddie sent me a bunch of the clips as well. Appreciate it. Great thumbnail in time for Halloween. Yeah. So the thumbnail, I like using AI. I like messing with it just to see if I can fool it around and see what it's doing. But the AI picture for last week's Welcome Back was actually, I prompted AI with Eddie Munster and Eddie Van Halen and a castle and Halloween and stripes and all that kind of stuff. I could never quite get the red and white to come with the right everything else, so I left it as black and white striped shirt. But yeah, that's actually AI's interpretation if Eddie Munster and Eddie Van Halen were kind of smashed together. So that was kind of funny. All right, so Plexidust. Hey, man. Thanks for the emails. Appreciate it, Plexidust. We listened to a group that was recorded so many times before. This one stuck out that they were afraid it was the last time every time. Probably very true. They were always worried, right? Are we going to get a track? Are we going to get a contract or what? Sandoval talked about how Ed used to have boxes of tubes and switched them out like a cray-cray person. Are you from the South? You got to be. Cray-cray. But during the interviews, he sounds like Einstein. Played like no one else. Sometimes he sounds like Einstein. Sometimes he sounds like, a lot of times he's like, hey, what do you mean? What do you mean? It's like, so what'd you think of your guitar tone on the album? He's like, what do you mean? Like, maybe it's because there's too many things that you needed it narrowed down. His mind exploded. But yeah. So setting up an amplifier, if you roll tubes through it, which you got to do to find the right ones, you're going to find some sounds. And you're going to find that not all tubes are created equal. And you're going to find powerful ones and you're going to find less than powerful ones. And you're going to find the right spots for them. So like for the Marshmallows, when I'm setting them up, I just spill all my, preamp tubes down. And I just start, I have them sorted. As I take all my preamp tubes at one point and I put them in the same amplifier in the first position. And then sort of rate them as to how I feel they are, and then I put them away again. So then I know which are very strong and which are not as strong, and then I kind of go into the amplifier that I've built for somebody, which is why I love building them one at a time again, right? So and taking like a week to dial them in. I can get the tubes that I want in there exactly right. Now, power tubes is a problem now, because I can't get, big bottle 60A7s. But I found a tube that works pretty good for, this effect of the Variac. So yeah, tube matching and tube experimentation is huge. As usual, Plexi, great comment. Got a couple more here. PVT grips, Van Halen or VH7TI. If Edward was indeed slaving amps in the studio, perhaps the different levels of sizzle for each song came from choosing different inputs on the front of amp number 2, since as far as I know there were no FX loops in those old plexis to go into the FX return like you have it set up. Now, all right, so all the FX returns, as I like to call them, are on these amps is a break in the signal chain inside the amp right after the treble pot before it reaches that 0.02 entrance to the phase inverter. And you just need a jack and about this much wire. So, and you can put that on the front. The front is actually not a bad place to put it as well, because you would go from the middle of the treble pot over to one of the a jack, right, that you're going to disconnect from the inputs. And then from that jack, you would go down to the input to the phase inverter. And when there's nothing plugged into it, you would have the stock circuit flow. But if you plugged into that jack, it would be an effects return, as I like to call it. A line in, whatever you want to call it. I just use nomenclature that's available. But this is not something that was unknown at that time, right? And I've seen, let's say, for instance, I don't know, lucky enough to have worked on a bunch of Malcolm and Angus Young's amps. And on a few of them, let's just say there were what would they call them? Upgrade accessories or non-stock items, non-stock things in there, which some were disconnected from long ago. And you had to know that that was something that was going on back a long time ago when they were using these amplifiers and kind of moved away from and disconnected, but the remnants were still there. And I was like, interesting. So it was known and it was done. So it's possible. But you're right. If you were to go into the different inputs, you could get different levels of distortion, as well as if you're using a level control to go into the next amplifier, you could just crank the crap out of it and blast the next amplifier harder to get more gain out of it. So yes, you are definitely on the right track, PVT Grips. Let's see. The last one is Jamie Gusky. What's up, Jamie? It was talked about on the Metram forum a long ways back, secret pedal, that there was a possibility of the unidrive circuit or pedal in one of those shells. Ed Hunt on the floor. I've tried the Jext Teles. I don't know what that is. And a couple of others. Also, there was a Zvex and the throwback effects overdrive boosts. All right. The one pedal I've heard lately that I thought of trying is with my setup, because I too hear some fuzz possibilities, is Jesse Davies King Tone Mini Fuzz V2. That has a lot of tone shaping when the box itself. It could probably be tweaked to suit, kind of like adding salt to soup. All right, Jamie. Let her rip, Tater Chip. You got to post your results so we can see what's going on. Regarding all the Metro stuff that sometimes is brought up here, I'm not familiar with any of it. I know George. I love George. We shared a couple of fun times at different amp shows. Had a bunch of laughs. He's a great guy. I like him very much. George is a good dude. And as a result, I was aware of his forums, but I felt it for me to hang out there would have been, I don't know. It wouldn't have been right, I don't think. That's his deal, his business, and I just didn't think it would be right. So I kind of stayed away from all the forums. And I've always stayed away from the forums. Anybody that knows me or is familiar with Blockhead or Three Monkeys knows. I mean, just recently I've started to do this YouTube stuff. Prior to that, I mean, I just wanted to work. That's all I wanted to do. I spent all my time with a soldering iron in my hand or paper and pencil or, just reading or, old tube manuals or whatever I could find and just thinking and listening. And that's all I did, because I don't want really like being influenced by too much. I always feel like I gotta find my own way, or I don't learn very well either, right? Like I can't be taught very easily. Everything like in school and in college, I really had to teach myself. I mean, there'd be the material and the teacher would try to teach it, but it just, it was just words and it was like bleh. In one ear, out the other ear. I'd have to take the material and work with it. And then I'd gain the understanding of it. And that's how I've always worked. So in some ways it's been a blessing because I've thought of stuff that I thought was unique or had the pleasure of discovering stuff instead of being told it. But in some ways it's a drawback because it takes a lot longer and you don't get credit, right? So it's like, hey, I know I could have, gotten a A+ on this AP, math exam 3 weeks after I took it because I didn't get around to fully understanding it until after the exam, right? When I finally was able to teach it to myself. So it's kind of weird, but it's all good. So yeah, Jamie, definitely record some stuff and let's see what it is. All right, we got Jimmy DeVere. A couple of observations on the room sounds. I agree the guitar does have a lot of girth to it, very full sound. They obviously did a lot to get it to fit in the track. The drum sounds so flat, yeah. But it's a testament to the studio production to get those drums to sound really good on record. The room shot is not a pleasing room. Gotta read more. In my opinion, kind of boxy and doesn't seem to recall hearing much of it on the records. Yeah, room sounds generally sound like crap. But I think if you put just enough in there where you would never even notice it, that it was a room sound, but just enough to fill it out and maybe take out some of the obnoxiousness, it could be useful. Man, there's a lot of, we might have to, how long are we going here? 50 minutes. This may be too long. All right. You know what we're going to have to do? Let's cut it here. And I'll do one this week and we'll finish up. I think there's so much information here. I got to catch up. And an hour is, I think, too long for a video. So let's cut it here. We're going to come back and I don't know what we'll call it. Wednesday is Sunday at Carville. Something like that. So Wednesday is Sunday at Marshmallow Man. And we'll go over, Cookie Puss and everything else for us. All right, so we're out of here. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you shorter than usual. See you then.